Our goal is to save agents time, save business owners time, and just make life easier for agents out there. Because anyone who's listening to this podcast probably knows insurance is hard enough as it is. We're just trying to make things easier on everyone out there.
You have made our job that used to take weeks, take literal minutes.
If you have a ton of emails, you can send out a link. Hey, you want to save money on your insurance? Here's a link to one of our intake forms. If they click on that, enter information, that info is going to end up right in Sembly for you as a lead.
A lot of the times prospects ghost agencies when they send stuff like that over, because once they see it, they're like, I got to find an easier way to buy my insurance. And then they go to, online and buy from one of the insurtechs that really in many cases doesn't even know what the risk is that they're writing. And it's a never ending spiral at that point.
When we built our process, how do we create a modern insurance experience with more computing power in the palm of our hand and sits in our pocket every day? Why can't we make insurance applications easy for our clients?
I'm old school, man. I always make the argument with the underwriter. Can we just warrant the application from your competitor and use that to quote? And if we need to get one filled out to bind, we will. That argument doesn't always work anymore either. So, having the ability to get a single source of data entry and then push it to multiple forms is huge.
We come in to offer a solution to the little guy, the medium guy, the big guy. We want to be priced for everyone. And that's really the name of the game, is making this accessible to the people that are going to need it the most.
Because I'm not a one-man shop, but I remember starting an agency 2.5 years ago, and I didn't have any of this technology, and I overspent. If you talk to Carrie Wallace and how much you should spend on technology, she might absolutely lose her mind to know how much we spent on tech to begin with. And we don't spend more now than we did. We just make more now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Today, I'm going to do you guys a solid. I brought in one of my favorite people in the industry as a guest host, Mr. Patrick McBride from the great state of Illinois. And I did that because he actually uses very effectively the product of our guest today, which is, Joe Ems from Sembly. Now, I don't know if you're going by Joe, Joseph, or Joey. You may get all three from me over the course of the next little bit. But these guys have a pretty cool technology that may seem familiar to you based on description verbally, but I can assure you is much different than what I've seen from competitors when I got to actually look at it. And it's different in a few different ways. Number one, user interface and ease of use. Number two, from an integration standpoint, it seems like these guys have got it figured out pretty good. But number three, price point. And I want to talk about that quick because I think that'll be the elephant in the room for everybody when you go to their website and you see how much this thing costs. Because I'll be honest with you, when...
Or doesn't. How much it doesn't cost.
Exactly. Right. Because when which one is it, man? Joe, Joey, Joseph?
Joe is fine.
Joe, got it. So when Joe and I talked and he showed this to me, my one piece of feedback to him, actually I gave him two pieces of feedback. Number one was, I think my question is, why are you going into this space when you already have three people that have been in here for a long time, which was answered also, honestly, both by his answer and visually as I watched his demo. But the other piece was, bro, you're charging way too little for your product. Like, my concern was people wouldn't take them seriously because there's a major disconnect from my perspective at their price point versus what you're going to see from some of their competition. And the reason I bring that up is not because I necessarily want him to charge more. I just want you to take the product seriously. There's nothing wrong with it. So when you go there and you see that there's a pricing discrepancy from what you might think it is, don't be looking for the other shoe to drop. Don't wonder what's broken. We'll solve all of those riddles and answer those questions because Patrick is a power user of the product. So I wanted to make sure we addressed that because I do want you to go check it out. I think that what they're doing is solving a problem that a lot of agencies have, but the agencies haven't been willing to invest because price point is too high and the pain of dealing with what you have to remain the same is actually not as bad as the pain to change as far as we perceive it. So with that being said, I want to introduce you guys to Joe Ems from Sembly, and I'm going to let him talk a little bit about himself and kind of what his background is and what led him to get to where he is with Sembly, and then we're just going to dive in and nerd out for a little bit, and I'm going to let Patrick, do a good bit of that because, like I said, he uses the product, he believes in it, and once I heard that, I'm all in. And if you're in Killing Commercial, Sembly is one of this year's new sponsors for Producers in Paradise. So we're going to have them down there and we're going to dive deeper into this. I've actually got some really, really cool technology-based sponsors that are new this year. And I shouldn't say necessarily replacing anybody, but in addition to, and we're going to, like, the format that we're using in Producers in Paradise is going to be a little bit different, but we're going to dive deep in a lot of this stuff. I'm super pumped, man. And if you're wondering when you're going to be able to register, I hate to tease, but I do have all the registration links. Now it's on me to build the landing page. I've got the links for the room blocks at both La Concha and the Saint. They're ready to go. I just have to build the landing page first. And you may ask yourself, David, why do you have to build the landing page first? And the answer is because you people don't listen when I tell you how to sign up. So the reason why is you now have to register for the event before you go to the thank you page, which will allow you to register for your hotel. Last year, I cannot even tell you how much time I spent reconciling who had gotten their hotel room versus who had actually registered to be there. Now you can't even get to your hotel room registration link until you've registered for the event. That's how we solve those problems. So I'll have it ready to go. I've already talked to Abraham at the Saint. I told him I'll give you a heads up, but I don't think I'll need to. Last year we sold out in under 48 hours, I think, at the Saint, and immediately spilled over to La Concha. So looking forward to getting that out and seeing how that's going to frame up. But I can tell you, we've got a really, really cool event planned this year. And another new sponsor, just quickly, not to overshadow the podcast conversation, but Insurance X-Date has decided to join us as a sponsor this year. And when I was talking to them yesterday, not only did they come in as a general sponsor, but he offered and actually insisted that he also wants to sponsor a scuba trip for 10 to 20 people that will be handpicked, because we know how it goes when I just give it a free-for-all for people to sign up for stuff. But it will be one of those resort type deals where you'll go learn in a pool for a couple of hours and then go do a couple of reef dives. So if you've ever wanted to go scuba diving, it would probably be a pretty cool way to learn and be able to go out and do that. And the reason I tell you that, quite honestly, is because there's a lot of you out there that really wish you could be in Producers in Paradise, and you just simply can't because you're not members of Killing Commercials. So if you want to see what that looks like, go to killingcommercial.com, and I lay it all out for you in a video buyer's journey. There are no secrets. It's either for you or it's not, but I can tell you it's going to be a good time. It's Club MTV spring break insurance style, so it's gonna get pretty fun again this year. So with that being said, Joe, all you, man, go ahead and tell them who you are and how you sort of ramped up to where you're at now, and then we'll dive in with the good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, the best way for me to tell you a little bit about myself is, I guess, kind of tell you how Sembly came to be what it is. Jeremy, our founder, he was a business owner. He was tired of dealing with the renewal process, getting sent over a PDF with question after question after question. And then after sending those back, getting even more questions from them. So he was looking for a solution to make things easier on business owners. And in that, he found that insurance agents were going through the same issue of having to take that information, get it onto a cord form, probably end up doing a supplemental at the end of the day too. So he came together and started looking for a solution for that. And he was looking for somebody who had some expertise in the insurance industry to come in as well. That's where I come in. So I come from an insurance background. I started working in agency for a while, working in PNC, commercial, personal lines. And most recently, before I came over here with Sembly, I was a regional manager over for one of the divisions for Chubb. So we got together and started to build what we have here, which in the end of the day, our goal is to save agents time, save business owners time, and just make life easier for agents out there. Because anyone who's listening to this podcast probably knows insurance is hard enough as it is. We're just trying to make things easier on everyone out there.
So before we go any further, man, I've got to ask a question because it had been driving me nuts and I finally figured it out. How many people tell you that you are an absolute dead ringer for Goose from the new Top Gun?
I get it just about every time I walk outside.
I was going to say, dude, like you could literally pass for him right now. I may brand the podcast that.
Last night I was at an event actually, and someone came up to me just from across the room and said it. My new line, I came up with this one last night. I said I was actually a stunt double in that movie. So that's gonna be my new go-to.
That's a good one, man. The original Top Gun had so many quotable quotes in it. Like when I was in college, that's what we were all quoting, the original Top Gun. But
Oh,
man,
yeah.
it was. I've only seen the new one time, and it was like not enough to like have it be at the forefront. But finally, it hit me. I'm like, holy cow, man, that dude looks just like Goose's kid from the new Top Gun.
Yeah. Hey, talk to me, Goose,
There you go. There you go. So, Patrick, listen, I know how tech forward you are in your agency and how important efficiency and automation is to you. I also know that you are very agnostic and open minded when vetting technologies, but you definitely thoroughly vet technologies before you jump on board and bring them in. It's not like a shiny object syndrome thing with you at this
Yeah.
point. Probably was at some point and you learned your lesson like the rest of us, and now you don't do that anymore. But when you were looking at options, what led you to the team at Sembly as being what would make sense for your agency?
So I'll be honest with you. So we had a competitor for the last couple of years, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with what we were looking at, but we didn't have a process around how to get the information in on a consistent form or fashion. So our team was struggling at inception, at the data ingest, and then at renewals. How do we get this back out? How do we easily, repeatedly do this job? And we just struggled. So we never really fully adopted it internally, and that's kind of where we struggled. So when we were shopping, we were definitely evaluating renewals, and when we came across Sembly, and I actually met with Joe, and we walked through it all, I was really blown away. I think the initial conversation was, I'm ready, but I'm not going to pull the trigger today because there's going to be 12 questions that pop in my head in an hour. And so he gave me a demo. He gave me what you guys have a trial account, right? For how many days? I think I got a trial. I'm going to make sure I wasn't special there. But I got a trial. I got in there, got to play with it, and I just started using it, and it became so easy to use. And I think that was the key for me, was the way that the data flowed, the way that we're able to put in, here's the entity, here's the legality, here's the contact. And it was, if you filled out an Accord form before, you know the process, right? Here's your 125, there's your 126. Now we're going to talk about your property, your work comp, your auto. It's going through that process in a way that no one else is doing, in a simple form or fashion. And I mean, I won't dig into some of the crazies. I'll let Joe kind of drop some eggs here, drop some bombs, and kind of get there. But I mean, that was the big piece for us. How do we simply and repeatedly, how do we create small repeatable steps to do this? We can't be successful if we can't repeat our successes. And I'm just always trying to find a way to simplify that process. And if I can automate it or integrate it, it's one less thing my brain has to remember. And not unlike you, right? The ADHDs run strong. I need something that is simple, that I don't have to deal with complexity, because I can figure it out once, but I won't do it twice because I remember how hard it was. And I don't want hard. My brain is not wired for hard. So let's make things easy, and let's go from there. This world is, I think, like Joe said, right? The insurance world is hard enough. Commercial is harder. How do we make things easy on our team? And how do we support our staff? How do we support our teams? And how do we do it in a way that allows them to feel like they're in control? And this was really, really an easy solution for us.
Dude, I think you just invented a tagline, Simply Sembly, when you were talking about that. Like that. I could see an entire commercial campaign around that, where, how did you get that done so fast? Simply Sembly. But yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing I think that caught me, honestly, and you can agree or disagree with this, Patrick, but it was almost like it seemed too easy to use. What's the catch? Right? Like I kept waiting for, okay, this makes sense. Looks like it works well. What's wrong? And like the entire time I'm watching Joe go through this, that's what I'm waiting to see. And it never happened. And, I think that that's refreshing. The other thing is, with the problem of getting data in the format that you get it in, and making it easy for your clients to interact and supply that, it's complicated, but it's not that complicated. And I feel like we're at a point now where we said it before, the pain to change is greater than the pain to remain the same in many cases. And right now it feels like pricing for those types of products just, it doesn't make sense, man. Like when I look at what it would cost for me to bring a solution into the agency and weigh that against how much we actually need it based on what current processes are, any of the players that were out there had just outpriced themselves from ever even getting a seat at the table. Where Sembly is in their price point and ease of use, it's almost a no-brainer to me at that point.
Well, I actually I think I told Jeremy the same thing. So he and I jumped on a call a couple weeks ago, and I said, "Hey man, I'm not saying this. And if you want to freeze my pricing today before I make a comment about how inexpensive you are, please do so." But there's no way that people don't look at this and go, this is a Hyundai on the Mercedes lot, right? Like why is this 92 Hyundai sitting on this lot when I'm trying to buy a Mercedes, right? I want the luxury. I want the bells and the whistles. I want the heated and massage seats. And that's what I expect when I walk on that lot. That's what I'm looking for in this platform, in this technology. And I walk in and you're priced like a 92 Miata. Maybe that's probably a bad idea, right? You're priced like a 92 Accord, right? Without the spoon engines, Hector. So Fast and Furious, somebody got it.
I got it.
Yeah. My man, Miles Teller up there getting the movie quotes. So like, that's what we were looking at. And we kept digging in. We want something simple. And I, you said it, David, right? The devil I know is better than the one I don't. And if I'm going to switch, does the cost, there's got to be a reason. It's the same reason our clients switch. I can come in and I can be less expensive. I can save this plaster contractor 5% this year. And I arguably have a better product. But is it arguably better for him and his time and his effort to actually go through the process? What kind of value do I bring beyond the premium, right? That's what our whole deal is about. That's what Killing Commercial is about. That's what this conversation starts as. I can save you 5%. 5% means nothing if we don't actually support the product. 5% means nothing if we don't actually have what we have here. So in my conversation with Jeremy, it was, how do you do this? And he gave a wonderful answer in his history and his background. And I'll let him tell that story, or Joe, if you know it, why you guys price what you price, because I argued against it, not because I want to spend more, but because there's going to be a lot of agencies out there who look at this and go, this is the lemon. They're just trying to knock it off, get a bunch of users and sell out.
I think it's interesting that you and I both said the exact same thing. Like Joe can attest to that. That was the one major piece of feedback that I gave him. I mean, and look, for all of you listening out there, we're not trying to like make things more expensive for everybody. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have them come on the podcast and kind of talk about their story and talk about that strategy and why it is the way that it is, because it's not something you should be alarmed or concerned about at this point. So why don't you, it's perfect segue to get into that a little bit, Joe.
Yeah. So the way I see it is, it seems like there's almost a little bit of a gap between the little guy and the big agency. It seems like a lot of the times with certain techs, there are minimums that you got to hit, right? You need to get 3 accounts at least, things like that. We work with a ton of one-person offices, single agents, people who are just starting out, they're at home and they want access to good technology. Why should they be prevented from that? So that's where we come in to offer a solution to the little guy, the medium guy, the big guy. We want to be priced for everyone. And that's really the name of the game, is making this accessible to the people that are going to need it the most.
Okay, well, you're a good guy who thinks about the industry and the people who need you as well. Can't shoot holes in that. Yeah. But you're right. And having been in the position of being a one-person agency that launched by myself, and quite frankly, wrote probably more ENS than I would like in those early days, kind of wish we had a time machine and I could go back, 9 or 10 years and be at a point where, I could actually have this stuff at my fingertips. But talk a little bit, Patrick, from your perspective. What's the need that it's meeting in your agency right now? Like, what is it really doing for you, number one? And number two, how did it help you pick up efficiency so that you're not spinning your wheels trying to track all this stuff down all the time?
Yeah. So, we use a CRM pretty heavy on the front end for all of our sales process automations, onboarding, claims, service, all of that. We have an AMS on the back end that does all of our downloads or records all the policies for our ENS stuff. But we don't put application data in either of those platforms. For the most part, CRM doesn't handle it. And I don't want non-clients in our AMS. That's an agency management system that's designed for my brain. That is designed exclusively to manage clients in the agency. If you're not a client yet, you don't go there, and you don't get there until we sell your policy on the front end. So for all of our personal line stuff, we have a solution that we use. We have an ingest point that it comes into our systems, and we can automate and integrate on that side. And we've been looking for commercial the same way. And really what it allowed us to do is a single point of ingest. So when I go through, I can easily go create an account inside Sembly, start putting the information in. Whatever questions I don't have, I can send over to the client. There are custom forms, which I'm going to brag a little bit here, Joe, and talk about your custom forms. I'm going to steal a little bit of your thunder here. When he released custom forms to me, I immediately booked a call with Jeremy to go, great, now how can we make it better? Because it was wonderful, but it was missing one thing that I really wanted. And it sounds like other people did too. So I think it's actually in development, which is fantastic. But we want a way where David, if your business wants a quote from our company, you found us somewhere, anywhere, and you submit for your information. My name's David. I own this company. I want some insurance. I want to be able to send a static link out to clients, and it's a static link, and it's our basic ingest, right? And it asks certain questions, and being able to go through that process and flow, we're able to house all that information in one secure place that our team can go and access and access for all time. That's the goal. Getting it from ingest to application to renewal, our entire process, we start that mental process, we start at renewal. We don't.
Whoop, we lost him. Wish I could tell you where he was going. We lost you, man.
Am I there?
You're back.
There we are.
Okay. Where'd you lose me?
I wish I could tell you, man. Like, but once you left, my ADHD went to the fact you were gone, and I needed to recover you. So
I think the last word I heard was renewal.
So, okay. So when we look at anything in any of our processes, we start at renewal and we work backwards. So we go renewal. How do I handle this renewal? That's going to help dictate how I handle the onboarding. That's going to help dictate how I handle the application process, the submission process, then the ingest process. We're working backwards. And Sembly allowed us to grab all this information, store it in one spot. And as we can compile that info, I tell you, the greatest feature I ever had was I can compile information for a client, and then I can go through and unhide the 6 questions I need from that application and send it over to the client. I don't have to create a collaboration link. I can just send them a blind link. They can log in, answer 6 questions, and move on, and they're done. I don't have to worry about anything else. Client doesn't need to see all those questions. It's overwhelming. Let's make this simple, right? When we built our process, how do we create a modern insurance experience with more computing power in the palm of our hand and sits in our pocket every day? Why can't we make insurance applications easy for our clients? And it has been a huge success on our end. And my team is just raves about it. And they know less about commercial than I do, I feel like. So when they talk about technology and process and how easy things are, that's what we're looking for. We want that review from that team.
Well, you say, why can't we make it easy for our clients? Why can't the frickin' industry make it easy for agents too, man? I mean, what was your first opinion the first time you ever saw an Accord form and realized you had to figure out how to fill it out? Like,
I feel like I should be PG
Chinese,
here,
man.
right? Yeah. Yeah. What the blank? I think if there's a beep button here, what the is exactly what I thought. Especially being captive for personal lines for so long. You didn't see that. So I tell people
form, it's like those old pictures. They used to have books of them, but then they had them. You hung them on the wall too in the mall back in the 90s, where it was like this image of a bunch of stuff blended together, and you had to cross your eyes a little bit to look at it, and then a 3D thing would pop out. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's what I feel about Accord forms. They look like that, and then I crossed my eyes, and all of a sudden, I can't unsee how Accord forms work now. But I can't imagine being a newer agent, and with the number of people that are coming in from the captive side, that's really a good point, man. I mean, if I'm running marketing for Sembly and sales for Sembly, I think that's a huge focus, is getting in front of the people that are migrating over from the captives and, hanging out their shingle on the independent side, because it's all brand new to them. They don't understand. I shouldn't say they don't understand, that's a negative thing to say, but they're not accustomed to having to follow the same processes that we do. And I can only imagine what the number one, the learning curve is like, but also what that does for the velocity of adding new business when you're having to slow down and learn what's essentially a new language in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, we recently brought on a newer agent who came over the exact story that you went through. He came over from State Farm. He was captive for a very long time, and I spoke with him. He had an interest in simplifying his Accord process, and we walked through the whole thing. He says, "Man, this is like I never have to look at another Accord form again." Because anyone who's looked at one once, like you said, you don't want to look at it again. They're a headache. So for someone who's just getting accustomed to dealing with Accord forms, having to look at an intake and work on that through an intake rather than go through line by line, box by box in an Accord form, figuring out what goes where, really simplifies that.
Yeah, I mean, I think even for like newer producers, with me having my two older sons in the agency now, what better way to teach them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so much easier to play fill in the blank than it is guess what goes where.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think the other use case, obviously is supplementals. And, I would think that would be one area where you might get some level of pushback, right? I can only imagine sitting in y'all's seat and having to take calls from agents, because my God, you didn't realize how many supplemental applications existed until you decided you were going to solve a problem for getting them completed.
Yeah.
And now I would imagine that many, you get calls every week with people who have found the most obscure supplemental that all of a sudden they need in your system. And you have to figure out a way to do that. And I mean, that's something that definitely will take time, right? Like, I can only imagine there's only so much you can have front loaded into a system until then you attack adding more forms and more applications based on demand. What's your strategy there? Because I know that that's probably a question people will have for you.
Yeah, I mean, so you hit the button, perfectly. It's just when it comes to supplementals, we have a chunk of them, right? But there's 1,000,001 and counting, and it seems like that number is growing every day. Everyone's got their own version of this. Everyone's got their own version of that. So like I said, we have ones to work with from the jump. But when it comes down to the supplementals that people need, we are consistently working on strategies to be able to get those into the system faster for our agents. And there's a few ideas that we have on ways to improve on that. Right now, it can be a little bit of a painstaking process and definitely a lot of blood, sweat, and tears getting those in there. But what we're working on now and the team that we're looking to build here, I think it's going to be an issue of the past in the not too distant future.
So while we're there, I want to interject. I want to ask a question about adding new supplementals and forms, and talking really about the ability to map that data that's already in the system or already being answered, and making sure that those forms, when you load them in, you're pre-filling as much as possible. So I know you do that some now, but talk a little bit about what that specific strategy is, not just being able to upload the form and answer questions, but making sure that the information, if I've already put it in on the 25, 27, the 30, or whatever number Accord I've done, talk about how what your process is for making sure that whatever tree trimming supplemental I have to submit is included.
Yeah. So, just like the Accord forms, our goal is to have everything mapped out so that all of this is going to populate exactly where you want it to be. Everything's going to work perfectly in the intake. So right now we are just kind of going through and we kind of work at this point on a needs basis. We work with, when an agent says to us, "Hey, we really need this one. This is a bread and butter supplemental for us." We go through, we get that mapped out. And it definitely takes some time, but it's something that we're always working towards to make sure that this is going to be the most efficient process that you can have.
Are you guys using any sort of language models to map that or help you map those currently?
Yeah, I know we're built on Ruby on Rails, so it's That's a little bit more in Jeremy's forte, our founder. Like I said, I am the insurance guy. He is our tech wizard.
It's all
Taking
right, man. Know your lane. Half your competition would make it up if they didn't know the answer. So you're good.
I did the best I could.
There you go, man. We need to see about getting McBride Starlink, man. I don't know what's going on over there, but holy cow, he's freezing like crazy, and I should get a screenshot of that face. So, what's roadmap? I mean, obviously you don't want to. I don't want you to share anything and everything that's proprietary, but you started in one area. Where do you see this thing expanding, and kind of what's your timeline for it?
Yeah, I mean, so right now, what I'd say the focus of Sembly is, and someone put this recently to us, that they really see this as a workflow software to simplify that commercial quoting workflow. So right now, what our focuses are getting data and then using that data efficiently. And how can we expand on that? So when it comes to getting data, we have a few different ways we're doing that. One, our intakes that you can share with your clients through email, text, client portal. We have Accord form imports as well. So for agents out there who have a ton of Accords saved within their computer, they can upload that PDF in our system. It's going to map all of that information directly onto an intake for you. And then the newer component that Patrick touched on is those custom intakes and what we're going to be able to do with that. And that's really exciting because the sky is the limit there. So with those custom intakes, like Patrick mentioned, you're going to be able to embed those on your website. That's going to be able to be your intake form. When that comes in, that will create a lead for you within Sembly, and you're going to have that information in Sembly, so it will map onto your Accord forms. You're going to be able to select questions from our question bank that is pulled from various Accords and supplements. And when you open those Accords and those supplements up, you're going to see those answers populate right from that intake form that your client filled out or prospective client filled out. That's going to map right onto your forms for you. Beyond that, you'll be able to share that link with clients too. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys have bought a list or two in the past. If you have a ton of emails, you can send out a link. Hey, you want to save money on your insurance? Here's a link to one of our intake forms. If they click on that, enter information, that info is going to end up right in Sembly for you as a lead. Now, that's gathering the information, right? Then we have what we're going to do with that information once it's available. So once that information is available within Sembly, that's going to populate onto your Accord forms for you. Beyond that, we have our integrations available. So we have thousands of apps that we can work through on a Zapier. And then something that's coming in the near future is being able to visualize and review that data and reports of that data in tables that you can customize, tables that you can filter through. So there's a lot that we're working on right now that, I mean, you could say some of them might be CRM-like features. Don't make the mistake. We're not calling ourselves a CRM by any means, but there are some features that are going to help you with that data that we are pulling in and data we are working with to even make things a little bit easier to track and manage within Sembly. So those are some of the exciting things that we are working on now, things that are becoming in the near future.
I think one of the things that I thought was most interesting, and you guys may have hammered this already, but it's the fact that you enter the information one time, and once you have it, it maps to the different forms, right? I
Yeah,
understood that right when we were talking. So that once you get that piece of information, it
it's
pushes
there.
to that same, field on whatever other applications you might have. And I mean, that's a huge deal for me. We're at a process right now where our content marketing is just ridiculous. It's crazy how much inbound we're getting, but it's inbound that we're getting that we want to get. It's not the same as paid ads. It's very high intent. And so what I'm hearing in or thinking through, which is why I only hear half of what you guys are saying because my mind's going a million miles an hour in the background, is all of these um, long forms that we have that are high intent could
Yeah.
literally be populating applications, as opposed to having it dump into HubSpot. Then Grayson has to go in, pull the information out of HubSpot, push it in. So that would be a huge time saver for us and save several steps. But um, the mapping across multiple applications is big. Like it's just not having to enter the same information more than one time. Like that's, to me, that's when you're running your agency the right way, is when you can focus on, okay, we've got the rest of it figured out. Now let's figure out how to do it in the least amount of keystrokes possible. Right. And
Exactly.
we haven't really been there yet, but we are now. It's kind of where we're at right now in my agency's life cycle. I was actually talking to some people from Killing Commercial this week, because one of the things that I do is I'm willing to share my workflows out of my CRM for other people who are on HubSpot. You know, if they want to learn what we're doing, fine. Here's a screenshot of how we build it. Go do it if you want to. And I'd promised them, and they had gotten a little bit impatient with me because it keeps taking longer and longer. But the reason why is because we literally are kind of overhauling our entire CRM right now. Because when we started the process, it was pre-COVID. Guess what? We don't do business the same way we did before COVID. So like our marketing drop sequences and the automations around that and a lot of these other things have to be completely redone. Well, guess what? I'm not the guy who does that stuff. So it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, I'll have it for you next Monday. But when we go in to start reprogramming HubSpot, you know, you take one thing out and think that you fixed whatever you need to, but you broke 3 other things at the same time. So we're literally at the stage in the agency where we go in, you know, for our sales meeting on Monday, and 1 hour of that sales meeting is dedicated to kind of engineering and reverse engineering how we're going to get the automations and stuff built in the CRM. And to Patrick's point, like when he put you on ice for a day or two because he knew he was going to have 10 more questions, that's kind of the same thing we're dealing with now. You know, we think that we have all of the granular steps of the process figured out on the board, and then 2 days later, Kyle has 3 things he forgot to mention. And I try and do something and realize, oh, well, we got to tweak this, we got to tweak that. It's not an easy process, but by the time we're done with this, we're at that point where, okay, let's figure out now we've got the basics figured out. How can we really fine tune it at this point to take it to the next level? And what you guys are doing is definitely something that will help us with that, especially with the market being where it is. The fact we've had a couple more storms this summer, you know, I was really hoping the market was going to soften. And everything on the news down here, believe it or not, is saying it still will. They're not expecting massive price increases because they had adequate reinsurance and everything, and kind of planned on this. But if it doesn't, we will write a record amount of E&S, and I'm not willing to do that the way that we've done it in the past. It's just way, way, way too unprofitable for us. I shouldn't say that it's unprofitable. It doesn't hit the same levels of profitability that the admitted markets and direct appointments hit for us, because we can go in and boom, quote it online. It's relatively easy and done. Most of the time with this other stuff, we're having to go to God knows how many markets who have multiple supplementals. I'm old school, man. I always make the argument with the underwriter. Can we just warrant the application from your competitor and use that to quote? And if we need to get one filled out to bind, we will. That argument doesn't always work anymore either. So, you know, having the ability to get a single source of data entry and then push it to multiple forms is huge. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It's a big opportunity for agencies who are still operating without that level of technology, and it's an easy technology to implement.
So I want to put this in a kind of a build a bridge for out there for anybody listening. New business is one way and renewals is another. And I think I'll hit both of them here pretty easy. You have a single intake. And I think, Joe, to Sembly's credit, the flexibility that you have over your competitors is something that I want to brag about immensely. When you release custom forms, and I jumped on a call with Jeremy, and he's like, so this is how you use custom forms. You go create the customer, and then you send the form to them. This is their form. And I'm like, no, man, we need a static link. Give me a link for this form, and I can send it out to anybody I want. And as they fill it out, it creates that profile inside Sembly. So imagine a world where we've got a static link, whether I fill that out internally, and this is my team's intake ingest, or I give it to the client and they want to do it themselves. They're super self-motivated. They can handle it. There's like 3 of them in the world. And when you find the 3rd one, let me know, right? But we get this intake. That information comes through the Sembly form on a static link. At a certain point, that's creating that person and that entity and that contact information and dropping certain information into our CRM, whether that's Agency Zoom, whether that's InsuredMind or Hawksoft or Salesforce or whatever or HubSpot or Salesforce, whatever you're using. The information comes from the form, goes directly into David. This would take that client and go from suspect to prospect, right? So it automatically moves it to the right stage. The next action steps need to happen. We're taking that information in, and then we can go immediately build the applications and supplementals directly from the information we've already gathered. We send that out. We've only entered that information once into Sembly. It created our profile inside the CRM. It triggered the actions for our sales teams and our producers and ourselves to do. We have the accords that are now ready, and we can go submit those over to our brokers as needed, and whoever we need to. Right? So there's that whole application process. We've only entered the information once. The broker says, hey, go fill out this sup. Okay, great. If it's found already inside Sembly, we actually go into their library. You can search and add a form at any time. You go add this new form, and it will pre-fill as much information as they have mapped or the information that we've already gathered. You finish the form, you send it off. This application process is one-time entry, and it's simplified our process, and it's integrating across the board. And at Renewal, this is the piece that I think all of us are really waiting for, and no one has done this extremely well or affordably. So I'll be very careful there, because I'm not a one-man shop, but I remember starting an agency 2.5 years ago, and I didn't have any of this technology, and I overspent. If you talk to Carrie Wallace and how much you should spend on technology, she might absolutely lose her mind to know how much we spent on tech to begin with. And we don't spend more now than we did. We just make more now, right? So we were able to scale.
But that was the whole point of spending the money on tech to begin with.
100%.
And I've actually had this conversation with Carrie before too, because you and I are in the same boat, man, with the amount of money that I've spent on building the tech stack. But if you compare my payroll and my revenue per employee to what an agency looks like that didn't make that investment in tech, I blow them out of the water.
Yeah. And I would probably put our numbers up there too right now. And we're poised to continue to grow and to continue to scale and acquire. And I could double our business today, and I don't need more service team based on what we do. Right. My account management can handle double the business as it sits. And that's what we did on purpose. But now we come to renewal, right? These E&S renewals or anybody like that. If we can take a single source of truth, right? So Joe, this policy gets sold, and here's where Sembly comes in and where I think the market needs to mature. And I think that you guys are on that right track, and I want to put things in your head if they're not already there and talk to the world. We're going to make it real today, and you guys have to go make it happen. So that's what I get to do today. We take this renewal. We've got a client coming up, and we have that single source of truth where here's the application from last year. Here's the 10 pieces of information I need to reconfirm for renewal. And I can take that information that's now locked from 2020, whatever, and send it over to the client. Hey, here's last year's numbers. Do these need to be updated, or are they good? And you get the customer to approve it or update it. And you're recording who did it. You've got IP address, you know that the client did it or the agent did it. You know, you're creating this accountability platform on who's answering what questions, where the information's coming from. And we take that and go, great. Well, everything else is the same. We click a button, and now you're refilling all those applications and all those accords based on last year's info and the updated data. You have made our job that used to take weeks, take literal minutes. And I want every agency owner out there to think about the hours it takes to redo these renewal applications and make sure that the data is right when you really only need 10 pieces of information. Go figure out what 10 you need, make them visible to the customer, send the form over in a link, or get them on the phone or set the appointment and go answer them your dang self, right? You know, take the extra 2 minutes, do the job for them, right? Here's what I've got. Is this right? Excellent. We're going to submit this information for renewal. I'll let you know what we've got soon. And you can trigger that automatically inside your AMS or CRM with automations based on renewal dates, 90, 120 days ahead of time. So you're not getting blocked in the market because they're out there shopping. You can go do the job right for your customers and do it efficiently. And if you're far enough in advance, they never have the opportunity to let somebody like me come in and go, hey, when's the last time you talked to your agent? Right? It's not just renewal, but there's a vision that you can see here that I can see for this sect of our industry that Sembly is really building, and you're already doing things that some other folks aren't doing, or you're doing it at such an affordable way that the technology is not, there's not a huge paywall behind it all, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the other thing too, man, is with that single point of data entry, you're also providing better client servicing because think about the number of times somebody goes, like use inbound as an example. Somebody fills out a web form. By the way, I'm gonna stop for just a second. I think everybody should have to look at shirtless Nick Berry live from San Diego because that was what popped up on my phone right now. Shout out to Nick. But regardless, think about how many times somebody fills out a form on your website and they're interested in getting quotes for new business or whatever. And the next thing you do is immediately, tell them, well, I've got some applications I need you to fill out. And what do? We send over the blank applications. Why in the world wouldn't we want to get everything on that we possibly can pre-populated from what they've already answered and call it a day, I mean, it just makes sense from that angle too. I've always had an issue with sending a client at renewal time or even a prospect, even if it's like a director's and officer's application. Even as a producer, I would always take the time to fill out the basic demographic information that wouldn't get me into an E&O problem if I answer those questions. I'm not going to answer the yes, no questions. I'm not going to do revenue projections or whatever else. But now you have the ability to have them fill out the lead form that we're already getting filled out, push that data into those supplementals, and that portion of it's done. And if I'm understanding correctly, you can hide that stuff because you don't need it answered at that point so that when they go in to give you the information, it's only the data fields that you need completed and it's over and done with.
Exactly. I
And
mean,
the
yeah,
thing is, man, that's the whole thing. The applications themselves look so flippin' daunting. And half of the information's just stuff that we could have already had completed for them. And I was on a call with an agency yesterday, and it's not somebody who's in Killing Commercial. They were exploring whether or not they wanted to come in and join the family. And the conversation kept going back to, yeah, but we just have such a hard time getting the underwriting data. We have such a hard time getting what we need to get the quotes done. And the whole time I'm talking to these people, I'm like, the answer's there, guys. Like this is a process issue. You need to realize that there are some things you can have that make it so much easier. But I feel like a lot of the times prospects ghost agencies when they send stuff like that over because once they see it, they're like, I got to find an easier way to buy my insurance. And then they go to, online and buy from one of the insurtechs that really, in many cases, doesn't even know what the risk is that they're writing. And it's a never ending spiral at that point.
So, Joe, I think that opens the door to talk about pre-fill or data that you guys are pulling from other sources. If you are what you're pulling, where you're pulling it from, and if you're not currently, where do you guys see Sembly kind of driving that? Because that's a huge piece. That has been a huge piece for us on personal lines with being able to pull that client and public data, VIN numbers, right, lien holders, property details, and property data. I know you guys have some of that, but I don't know quite the extent. So this is a great opportunity to highlight that.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, what we have the capability to do is we're working with a third-party data source that is pulling property information, public information that we're going to pull. You get to that part of your accord where you've got to fill in all of this commercial property data. You're probably spending time going on Zillow, Redfin, Googling different sites. We're going to pull all of that for you using this third-party source that we're working with. And not only is that just going to pop up on the screen, that's going to map directly into your intake, ending up on that accord form. So we're saving people a ton of time there. There are agents who said to me, you could make a business just out of pulling this information and putting it on the form, let alone everything else that's offered. Beyond that, we do also pull some company information from public sources through that third-party data. That's not as robust as the property data. I'd really say the property data is the star of the show, but there are a lot of things that we want to expand on there. There are a few things, I don't know if I'm able to talk about them quite yet, but we do have some pretty exciting stuff that David and I actually, he made some really nice recommendations and we took those to heart. So there are some really exciting things that we got in the pipeline that we have in terms of the data we're going to be able to provide for agents in addition to what's already there.
So let me ask you a question, and this is, I swear, this is like an honest question I don't know the answer to, but from a best practices standpoint, and really either of you can answer it, because I'm sure Patrick does have it figured out, but when you go and when you use the public record to scrape the data and use it for property to push it in, what's best practice for how you present that to the client at that point? Because based on what I'll explain further. Based on what I've heard is, you hide the things you don't need answered, but do you leave that unhidden and make them validate that?
I'd like
I'll speak for me, and then I'll let Joe kind of tell. From our end, anything we assume, we ask. So if we've made the assumption no dog bite history, we're going to ask, hey, we assumed this. Is this correct? Same thing with property data, right? What we see is we see a building permit pulled for a new roof in 2014. Is that the last time the roof was rebuilt?
Yep.
And those are questions we're asking. So if their assumption was made, the question gets asked. Like that is an internal protocol for us. So I get that answers our process question. Joe, you were going to say something there. I want to make sure you get that opportunity.
Yeah. So we were right on the same train of thought there. I mean, so what we like to say is you can get that information, pull it in, and then when you go to send over those questions, don't hide that information. You can send over questions that were filled out by the agent to verify that information. Don't hide those questions. Send them over. Make sure everything is 100% correct, because in the end of the day, we want to make sure we're trying to eliminate as much back and forth as possible. So let's have you verify that information so I don't have to hop on the phone with you in 20 minutes.
Perfect. Yeah. And I mean, I asked the question, number one, because I wanted the answer, but number two, I wanted agents out there to realize you probably need to be thinking about that, because I do feel like when things are easy, that we tend to set it and forget it. And we also forget that not all data is created equal. And there are going to be times where through no fault of Sembly's, the information is inaccurate that's put out and you happen to grab it. So, keep that in mind, regardless of what product you're using as an agency, you need to make sure you're verifying that, even though, you're getting it pre-populated, it doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% accurate. And the last thing I would hate for you to do is to just make an assumption and then it ends up being wrong.
So I've got a question for you on the future of Sembly, and this is probably way too early for this conversation, but I want to plant some seeds and things that we tried to build here in our agency with some language models and ChatGPT assistants and some custom things. With most commercial policies, there's not a lot of PII, right? Unless you get a driver's list somehow, there's almost no personally identifying information. So we can create these private assistants and upload this data in and ask questions. So we built what we call an application assistant for our team. You can upload a commercial policy, ask it questions. What's property one? What's the value? What kind of property they have there? What are the exposures? What are employees? We have that built already internally. Do you see a world in which we can do that through Sembly or through a partner like you guys to upload that property data in a private way and be able to fill out those accords for us? Because I tried, and ChatGPT just gives me a really cool looking picture of the Ford F-350 with the company name on the side. It's trying to build me a picture and not actually build an accord form. So, future looking, how does that look for you guys? Have you even thought of something like that yet?
There have been some early discussions on some artificial intelligence tools. I can't say exactly what direction we would be going with that and what the timeline is, but it's definitely not off the table. It's something that we've definitely talked about. And if I had Jeremy on here, I'm sure he could probably flesh that out a little bit more than I can. Like I said, I am the insurance guy. He's the brain. But it's definitely something that's been talked about, but can't give away too many details quite yet.
I love it. I just love the idea of being able to upload the policy and being able to fill out an accord, but also see all the endorsements and extensions and all the different pieces that talk about the exclusions and what is included or endorsed. It's not written by hand. Like there's a lot of data out there that we can start to pull as agents. And that's, relying on partners like Sembly and the others out there is how we get better together. Because how many agents can go build that on their own? But being able to partner with somebody and having these conversations is how we all get better together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I think that we're in a position where I don't know that one company needs to figure everything out. You know what I mean? Because as you're asking that question, my mind immediately goes to another one of our partners with Killing Commercial, which is Blue Pond AI, who does policy form comparison. They're already pulling information out of policies, comparing what's issued to what was quoted, what's issued to, or what you're proposing versus what the expiring looks like. And they're doing that with AI, but then also still have a bit of human review to make sure that the AI is operating the way that it should. If I hear that they're pulling information out of policies and comparing it, and you're pushing information into things, to me, that's a natural conversation that I would have between two companies and see if they could figure out how to work with each other, as opposed to putting a bunch of money into R&D and coming up with the technology that's the same or similar to something that's already out there that could be leveraged. And I think that's really the power of the community of insurtech companies right now, because I think when you look at what makes them different than agencies, aside from all the obvious things, one of them is collaboration. I think when you put the average agencies in a room together, and I say average, I'm not talking about the people in our crew because we share pretty much everything. But if you were to put us in a room with a bunch of other agencies, we're not going to collaborate. We're not going to share stories. We're not going to be willing. I mean, to a certain degree we would, but we're not going to give up the good stuff. Whereas when you look at some of these insurtech companies, when they hear the roadmap that agents are looking for, a lot of times it's cheaper and quicker to market for them to cut deals and work with each other behind the scenes than it is to try and invent the stuff themselves. And, I've been involved in some investments that have gone very well, and I've been involved in some investments that haven't gone as well as the ones that have gone very well. And the things that I've noticed in the ones that have lagged has been, to Patrick's point, when we were talking before we started recording, they tried to go wide before they went deep. And I think that, we are very vocal as a constituency, as agents. We want you to hear what our problems are, and we all think that whatever our problem is the one that's the most important. And as a startup organization, you want to try and bring as many people on as you can, and it's human nature that we try and please all of those people, when the reality is it ends up being an absolute train wreck for the product development because there is no focus in the product. So that's just my 2 cents, man. I mean, from what I've seen of what you're doing, what I hear from you, what I hear from Patrick, you guys have it figured out for where you're at. I mean, I don't know that I'd let too much noise get in my ear and distract me from the path that I'm on until it becomes, something that, okay, we've got this completely built out and honed in the way that we need to. Let's move on to the next thing. I think there's ways that you can collaborate with other people and build a stronger product for all of you, and live symbiotically that way. Just my 2 cents, though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, man, we've been going for about an hour. What did we miss? Anything else we want to put out there before we wrap up? Because, what I've learned more than anything else out of this, Patrick, is I need to have you come back, and I also need to have Jeremy come on, because there are a lot of questions that I feel like Jeremy could answer that would be valuable for everybody to hear.
Yeah, he's definitely got a.
Not that Joe's a slouch. Let's be very, very clear, but if the Hollywood thing continues to work out for him, we got to know the other guy.
Yeah. I think, Joe, is there anything you want everybody to know, right? What's something we haven't hit on that you want to make sure that people know about Sembly?
I mean, yeah, we have some really cool things in the pipeline right now, like some custom integrations that we're working on with kind of hitting both of you guys with this one with Now Search and Hawksoft. So those are 2 things that are going to be coming soon. So we're very excited about that. Very excited to get involved with those teams. And beyond that, the one thing we wanted to throw out to everyone in the Killing Commercial community, everyone listening to this podcast, if you're booking a demo with Sembly, and if you write into the notes on that, power producers, we're going to give you a 10% discount for your first 12 months. So hope everyone listened to the end here, because you can save yourself a little bit of money on the system. But yeah, I mean, we really appreciate you guys having us on and giving us the platform to talk about this. You guys have both been great. Patrick, we have that relationship already from working with Sembly, but David, I'm really excited to continue to work with you and really get involved in this community you've built.
Absolutely, man. It's going to be a great time for sure. So listen, everybody, check it out. Go to Sembly's website. You heard what the code is in the notes. Just put in Power Producers. We'll add some instructions around that in the show notes as well to drive some traffic over there. But go check it out and book yourself a demo. I mean, this is it's a no-brainer. I think that you'll probably, after hearing us talk about it, have some of the same revelations as you go through it and be like, wow, this is what, like, what's wrong? You know what I mean? But there, I can assure you there's nothing wrong. The products will speak for itself. So I encourage you to go over and sign up for a demo. Otherwise, we're going to let you guys run, and we will catch you next time. See ya.